John never thought love had conditions until the day his wife walked out on him. A struggling farmer, he had spent years battling droughts, debt, and disappointment, clinging to the hope that things would get better. But to Emily, his wife, hope wasn't enough. "I can't live like this anymore," she told him, her voice cold, her bags packed. "I deserve more." And just like that, she was gone. Left alone on his failing farm, John hit rock bottom. He worked from sunrise to sunset, barely making ends meet. Each day was a battle, but he refused to give up. Then one fateful evening, everything changed. A chance encounter with none other than Keanu Reeves turned his life upside down. The Hollywood icon, known for his kindness and unbelievable gestures, saw something in John, a determination, a fire that others had overlooked. That moment set off a chain reaction that would lead John to a future no one could have imagined. Years passed, and John was no longer a struggling farmer. He had built an empire from nothing, rising to become a self-made billionaire. Wealth, power, and success. He had it all. But then, one unexpected message shook him to his core. It was from Emily. She wanted to meet. She wanted to talk. Had she truly realized her mistake, or was this just about his fortune? And more importantly, after all these years, would John even care? Stay with us as we uncover a story of heartbreak, redemption, and the ultimate test of loyalty. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't anger, it's success. John had always believed that hard work could fix anything. Growing up on his family's farm, he watched his father wake up before dawn, tending to the land with hands that told the story of years spent battling nature. His mother, ever resilient, found joy in the little things: freshly baked bread, laughter at the dinner table, and the promise that hard times never last forever. That belief carried John through his own struggles, but life had tested him more than he ever imagined. After Emily left, the loneliness was unbearable. The farm, once a place of love and shared dreams, now felt like a graveyard of broken promises. He threw himself into work, but no matter how hard he tried, the debts grew and the land refused to yield. No one believed in him anymore, until that day. It was an ordinary evening. John, exhausted, sat on his porch, staring at the endless sky, wondering if it was time to give up. That's when a car pulled up, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Stepping out was a man he never expected to see in real life: Keanu Reeves. At first, John thought it was a joke. What was a Hollywood legend doing on his failing farm? But Keanu wasn't there for a movie or publicity stunt. He had heard about struggling farmers in the area and had come to see their reality himself. What happened next was an unexpected gesture that would change John's life forever. But why had Keanu Reeves really chosen John's farm? And how would this one meeting reshape John's future in ways no one could have predicted? Stay with us as this emotional journey unfolds, because sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that are true. John stood frozen, struggling to process the fact that Keanu Reeves, the world-famous actor, the internet's favorite humble celebrity, was standing on his farm, looking at him with genuine curiosity. It didn't make sense. Was this some kind of dream? But the dust on Keanu's boots and the exhaustion in his eyes said otherwise. "You're John, right?" Keanu asked, his voice calm but firm. John nodded slowly, still unsure of what to say. "I've been hearing about farmers around here," Keanu continued. "How hard it's been, how people are giving up. I wanted to see it for myself." John's throat tightened. No one, not the banks, not the government, not even his own wife, had ever cared enough to ask how he was surviving. And yet here stood Keanu Reeves, taking the time to listen. But listening didn't change the numbers in John's bank account. His farm was still drowning in debt, and he was weeks away from losing the land that had been in his family for generations. His parents had fought to keep it running. Was he just going to be the one to let it all slip away? As if reading his thoughts, Keanu glanced around. "You've got something here," he said. "This place, it's got a story." John sighed. "A story doesn't pay the bills." Keanu smiled, but there was something unreadable in his expression. "Maybe not, but sometimes the right people hearing the right story can change everything." Before John could ask what he meant, Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He took a picture of the farm. What was he planning? Was this just a celebrity's moment of kindness? Or was Keanu about to do something bigger? The answer was coming, and it would be an unexpected gesture that no one saw coming. John barely slept that night. Keanu Reeves had taken a picture of his farm, spoken about stories changing everything, and then left without explaining what he meant. What was he planning? Was this just a kind gesture, or was something bigger in motion? The next morning, John woke up to something he hadn't felt in years. Hope, but it didn't last long. As he stepped outside, he saw a familiar car pull up. It was Mr. Langley, the banker who had been threatening foreclosure for months. "John," Langley said with a forced smile, stepping out and adjusting his expensive suit. "I'm here to remind you, final payment is due in 2 weeks. No extensions." John's heart sank. "I told you, I just need more time." "No more time," Langley interrupted. "Either you pay or the farm is auctioned off." As Langley drove away, John clenched his fists. 2 weeks. That's all he had left before he lost everything. Even if Keanu had some kind of plan, was there enough time? Meanwhile, miles away in Hollywood, Keanu Reeves sat in his trailer, scrolling through his phone. He had posted the picture of John's farm with a short but powerful message. "This land has a story. It deserves to be saved." What happened next was beyond anything John could have imagined. The post went viral. Millions of likes, thousands of shares. People were talking, questioning, demanding action. But not everyone wanted John to succeed. That same night, a stranger in a dark car pulled up near his farm, watching from a distance. Not everyone was happy about this sudden attention. Something was coming, and it wasn't just help. It was an unbelievable twist that could change everything. John could feel the pressure closing in. The bank's deadline loomed over him like a storm cloud, and despite Keanu Reeves' unexpected gesture, nothing had changed yet. Millions of people were talking about his farm, but talk didn't pay the bills. He still had no way to come up with the money in just 2 weeks. What if this was all false hope? What if Keanu's post, despite its viral success, led to nothing? Meanwhile, his family was starting to crack under the weight of uncertainty. His mother, who had always been the pillar of strength, sat silently at the kitchen table, her hands clasped together in prayer. "Maybe it's time to let go, John," she whispered one night. "Your father and I always wanted you to have a better life than this." But this farm was his life, his legacy. He wasn't ready to give it up. And then things got worse. That night, John was woken by a strange sound outside, the sharp crunch of gravel under tires. Grabbing his flashlight, he stepped onto the porch and saw 2 figures standing near his barn. Before he could call out, they sped off in a black car, disappearing into the darkness. When he ran to check, his stomach dropped. His water pump had been destroyed. The only thing keeping his crops alive had been vandalized. Someone didn't want him to succeed. Back in Hollywood, Keanu Reeves was on a mission. He had seen how the internet responded to John's story, but it wasn't enough. It was time to take things into his own hands. But would he be too late? Because John's enemies weren't just waiting, they were making their move. John stood in the ruins of his broken water pump, his heart pounding. This wasn't just bad luck. Someone was trying to make sure he failed. And with only days left before the bank took his farm, he had never felt more helpless. Then his phone buzzed. It was a call from an unknown number. Hesitant, he answered. "John? It's Keanu." John's breath caught. Keanu Reeves. Again. "I need you to come to town," Keanu continued. "Right now." John didn't ask questions. He jumped into his truck and sped toward town, gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. When he arrived, his jaw dropped. The town square was packed. Reporters, cameras, and hundreds of people holding signs that read, "Save John's Farm." And in the middle of it all, standing next to a podium, was Keanu Reeves. John barely had time to process what was happening before Keanu spoke. "John's story isn't just about one man," Keanu said, his voice steady and powerful. "It's about every struggling farmer who's been left behind. And today, we're changing that." The crowd erupted in cheers, but the real shock came next. Keanu turned to John, a small smile on his face. "I have something for you." A check. a check big enough to pay off the farm's debts completely. But before John could react, Keanu raised his hand to silence the crowd. "This isn't just a donation," he said. "It's an investment. We're going to rebuild your farm and turn it into something even bigger." John's legs nearly gave out. He wasn't just saving the farm, he was getting a future he never dared to dream of. But as the celebration began, a dark figure washed from the shadows. Not everyone was happy with this outcome. Tears welled up in John's eyes as he looked at the check that would save his farm. But more than the money, it was the realization that someone believed in him, that his story, his struggles, mattered. Keanu Reeves wasn't just giving him a second chance, he was giving him a future. The crowd erupted in cheers, and John felt the weight of years of failure finally lift off his shoulders. He had fought, he had endured, and now he had won. But just as relief set in, he noticed a figure in the distance. Mr. Langley, the banker, watching with a clenched jaw. Langley had been counting on John's failure. The bank had already lined up a buyer for the land, someone who didn't want John to succeed. Maybe even someone who had sent those men to sabotage the farm. But now all of that was ruined. Keanu turned to John and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "This isn't just about saving your farm. We're turning it into a place that inspires others, an example of what's possible when people come together." And that's exactly what happened. With Keanu's help, John's farm became a thriving agricultural hub, using sustainable techniques and employing local farmers who had been struggling like he once had. His land was no longer a burden, it was a beacon of hope. Months later, as he walked through the golden fields, John heard a familiar voice behind him. "Emily." She looked at him, regret clear in her eyes. I made a mistake." John smiled, shaking his head. "No, Emily, you made a choice, and so did I." And with that, he turned away, toward the life he had built on his own. Because the best revenge is success.